This is insane. You can't just sell me off.
It's done. Your father sold you to me. You do as I say now.
I'm not a commodity. Why are you being so nice to me?
Because it's what husbands do.
A sheltered heiress traded to Seoul's most dangerous crime lord discovers that escape isn't an option because he refuses to let her go. Before we dive into the story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next thrilling romance. Trust me, you'll want to see what happens next. The contract arrived on a Tuesday morning, wrapped in black silk and sealed with blood-red wax. Rose sat in her father's study, fingers trembling as she traced the embossed characters spelling out terms she couldn't refuse. Marriage. Debt settlement. Transfer of ownership. Her father wouldn't meet her eyes as his lawyer explained that she had 48 hours to prepare. "This is insane," Rose whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of rain hammering against the windows of their Gangnam estate. "You can't actually expect me to. It's done." Her father's voice cut through her protest like a blade. Park Jin-woo had built his real estate empire through calculated risks, but this time he'd gambled with the wrong people. The Kang syndicate didn't forgive debts, and they certainly didn't negotiate. "The wedding is Saturday. You'll do this for the family." Rose stared at the document, at the name written in bold strokes at the bottom. Kang Jae-min. She'd heard whispers about him at charity galas and society functions, always spoken in hushed tones, always accompanied by nervous glances. The heir to Seoul's most powerful crime family. A man who'd reportedly killed his first rival at 17. A ghost who moved through the city's underworld like death itself. "What if I refuse?" Rose asked, though she already knew the answer. Her father finally looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes wasn't love or regret. It was resignation. "Then we all die. He's given us a choice, you, or everything we've built, everyone we know. Be grateful he's willing to make it legal." The lawyer cleared his throat. "The ceremony will be private. Immediate family only. Mr. Kang has already made arrangements for your relocation to his primary residence in Hanam-dong." Rose felt the room tilt. Saturday. 3 days. She had 3 days before her life belonged to a stranger who bought people like her father bought property. The rain continued through Wednesday and Thursday, as if the sky itself mourned her fate. Rose spent the hours packing the life she'd known into suitcases that felt like coffins. Her mother had died when she was 12, leaving her father to raise her in gilded isolation. Private tutors. Carefully curated social events. A world of luxury that had always felt more like a beautiful cage. Now she was trading one cage for another. Friday evening, a package arrived. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper so fine it was nearly transparent, was her wedding dress. Rose lifted it from the box with shaking hands. White silk that caught the light like water. Traditional meets modern, a fitted bodice with a flowing skirt, delicate embroidery along the hem. Beautiful. Expensive. Chosen by someone who'd never asked her preference. She tried it on alone in her room, staring at her reflection in the full-length mirror. The woman looking back was a stranger. Dark hair swept up, revealing a neck that seemed too slender, too vulnerable. Brown eyes wide with fear she couldn't quite mask. At 23, she'd imagined her wedding day would be different. Love. Choice. Joy. Not this cold transaction. The dress fit perfectly, which somehow made everything worse. He'd known her measurements without asking. Had probably known everything about her before her father had even proposed the arrangement. Rose didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed watching headlights sweep across her ceiling, wondering if she should run. But where would she go that Kang Jae-min couldn't find her? His reach extended through every level of Seoul's society, from the politicians in the National Assembly to the gangsters in Itaewon's back alleys. She was trapped before the ceremony had even begun. Saturday morning arrived with brutal sunshine. Rose let the hired makeup artist paint her face into a mask of serenity while her mind screamed. The woman didn't speak much, just murmured occasional instructions. "Close your eyes. Tilt your head. Beautiful. Beautiful." Like that mattered. At 11 o'clock, a black Mercedes pulled up to her father's estate. Rose watched from her bedroom window as two men in dark suits emerged, their movements efficient and precise. Security. Or guards. Probably both. It's time, her father said from the doorway. The drive to the wedding venue took 20 minutes. Rose stared out the tinted windows of the city she'd lived in her entire life, wondering if she'd ever see it the same way again. They pulled up to a private estate in Hanam-dong, all stone walls and manicured gardens, isolated from the world by money and power. Inside, the ceremony room was small. Intimate. Her father stood to her left. The lawyer who'd delivered the contract stood to her right. At the front of the room, beside an officiant whose hands trembled slightly as he held his book of vows, stood Kang Jae-min. Rose's breath caught. She'd expected someone older, scarred by violence, marked by the cruelty everyone whispered about. Instead, the man waiting for her was perhaps 30, dressed in a black suit tailored so precisely it looked like armor. Tall, broad-shouldered. His face was almost beautiful in its severity, sharp jaw, high cheekbones, eyes so dark they appeared black in the room's soft lighting. He didn't smile when she approached. Didn't show any emotion at all. He simply watched her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Rose stopped beside him, close enough to catch his scent, something expensive and clean, cedar and smoke. The officiant began speaking in Korean, traditional words about unity and commitment that felt obscene given the circumstances. Do you, Park Rose, take this man? Yes. Her voice came out steady. A small victory. The officiant turned to Jae-min. Do you, Kang Jae-min, take this woman? Yes. One word. Delivered with absolute certainty. The rings appeared, produced by one of the security guards. Rose's hands shook as Jae-min slid a platinum band onto her finger. It was heavy. Cold. When it was her turn, she had to grip his hand to steady herself, and the contact sent electricity racing up her arm. His hand was warm, calloused in ways that suggested violence, steady in ways that suggested control. You may kiss the bride. Jaemin's eyes finally left hers to glance at the officiant, and something flickered in his expression, irritation, perhaps at the presumption. Then he looked back at Rose, studying her face as if memorizing it. He didn't kiss her. Instead, he released her hand and turned to the officiant. We're done here. The ceremony had lasted less than 10 minutes. Rose was married to Seoul's most dangerous man, and he hadn't even kissed her. The reception was equally brief. Her father congratulated her with the enthusiasm of someone attending a funeral. The lawyer produced documents for signatures. Jae-min signed without reading them, his handwriting bold and precise. Your belongings will be transferred this afternoon, Jae-min said. The first full sentence he'd spoken to her. His voice was deeper than she'd expected, with a rough edge that suggested he didn't use it often. You'll stay here. Not a question. A statement. Rose found her voice. I'd like to say goodbye to. No. She blinked. Excuse me. Jaemin's gaze fixed on her, and Rose felt the full weight of his attention like physical pressure. You're mine now. That life is over. The transition will be easier if you accept that immediately. Behind her, she heard her father shift uncomfortably, but he said nothing. Of course he said nothing. He'd already sold her. Rose straightened her spine, channeling every etiquette lesson, every moment of composure her upbringing had drilled into her. I understand the terms of our arrangement, Mr. Kang. But I'd appreciate basic courtesy. Something changed in his expression. Not anger. Interest. Courtesy, he repeated, as if tasting the word. Then, to her father, leave. Park Jin-woo didn't argue. He and the lawyer departed with embarrassing speed, leaving Rose alone with her new husband and his security team. Jae-min dismissed the guards with a subtle gesture. They filed out silently, closing the heavy doors behind them. The room felt suddenly smaller. You want courtesy, Jae-min said, moving closer. Not touching her, but close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Here's my courtesy, I'm giving you time to adjust. You'll have your own rooms. Your own space. I won't touch you until you're ready. Rose's heart hammered. And if I'm never ready? Then we'll have a very long marriage. He said it without humor, without threat. Just fact. Why? Rose asked. The question escaped before she could stop it. Why agree to this? You could have just taken what my father owed you. Why marry me? Jae-min studied her for a long moment. Your father's debt was inconvenient, not significant. I didn't need his money. Then why? Because I wanted you. The words landed like stones in still water, sending ripples through every nerve in Rose's body. You don't know me, she whispered. I know enough. He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and touched the collar of her wedding dress. Not her skin, just the silk. I know you graduated top of your class at UA Women's University. I know you speak 4 languages. I know you volunteer at the Children's Hospital in Gangnam every Thursday afternoon. I know you read poetry and listen to classical music when you can't sleep. Rose jerked back. You've been watching me. For 6 months. The admission was delivered without shame, without apology. Just another fact in Kang Jae-min's world. That's Rose's voice failed. She tried again. That's insane. That's thorough. He lowered his hand. I don't make decisions without information. When your father came to me with his proposal, I'd already decided what my answer would be. This isn't a business deal. This is my life. It's both. Jae-min stepped back, giving her space she desperately needed. Your rooms are upstairs. 2nd floor, East Wing. My rooms are West Wing. We have staff, but they know not to disturb you without permission. You're free to go anywhere on the estate grounds, but you don't leave without security. I'm a prisoner. You're protected. His expression hardened. There are people in this city who would hurt you to hurt me. That's the reality of who I am. Accept it or spend every day fighting against inevitability. Your choice. Rose wanted to scream. To run. To wake up from this nightmare. Instead, she asked the only question that mattered. What do you want from me? Jae-min's eyes darkened. For the first time since she'd seen him, something that might have been emotion crossed his face. I want you to survive. Everything else, we'll figure out. He turned and walked toward the doors, moving with the kind of grace that suggested years of physical training. At the threshold, he paused. Welcome home, Rose. Then he was gone, leaving her alone in the ceremony room wearing a wedding dress that cost more than most people earned in a year, married to a man who'd admitted to stalking her for half a year, trapped in a gilded cage that made her father's restrictions look like freedom. Rose sank into the nearest chair and finally let herself cry. The rooms Jae-min had assigned her were ridiculous. 3 spaces connected by interior doors, a bedroom larger than her entire apartment at university, a sitting room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate gardens, and a bathroom that resembled a luxury spa. Everything was decorated in soft neutrals and natural wood, elegant without being ostentatious. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt like the world's most expensive prison cell. Rose spent the first hour exploring, opening drawers and closets, confirming what she'd already suspected. Jae-min had prepared for her arrival. The closet contained clothes in her exact size, ranging from casual wear to formal gowns. The bathroom was stocked with her preferred skincare brands. The bookshelf held first editions of her favorite novels, including some she'd only mentioned wanting in private conversations with friends. He'd been watching her, listening to her, learning her. The violation of it made her skin crawl, but beneath the anger was something else she didn't want to examine too closely, fear that he was right. That she would adjust. That this would become normal. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in, Rose called, expecting a staff member. Instead, Jae-min entered carrying a tray. He'd changed out of his wedding suit into dark slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms marked with faded scars that told stories he'd never share. You didn't eat at the reception, he said, setting the tray on the sitting room table. I thought you might be hungry. Rose stared at the food, soup, rice, banchan, carefully arranged and still steaming. You brought me dinner. I told the kitchen staff to give you space today. Seemed like you'd prefer privacy. It was thoughtful, which made everything more confusing. Thank you, Rose said carefully. She didn't move toward the food. Jae-min's mouth twitched, almost a smile. It's not poisoned. That's not what she stopped. What was she worried about? Why are you being nice to me? We're married. Why wouldn't I be nice to you? Because you bought me like property. Because you stalked me. Because you're a criminal. He finished her sentence without flinching. Yes, I am. I've done things that would give you nightmares if you knew the details. But you're not my enemy, Rose. You're my wife. There's a difference. Rose finally moved to the table, not because she was hungry, but because standing felt too vulnerable. She sat, and Jae-min remained standing, his posture relaxed, but his attention focused entirely on her. What happens now? She asked. Now you eat. Then you sleep. Tomorrow we'll establish a routine. That's not what I meant. What happens with us? Jae-min pulled out the chair across from her and sat. The movement was controlled, deliberate, giving her time to object. That depends on you. I meant what I said earlier. I won't force myself on you. But you expect me to eventually. I expect nothing. His eyes held hers. I hope. But I don't expect. The distinction felt important, though Rose couldn't articulate why. And if I never want that, she pressed, then we'll have a very long, very complicated marriage. He leaned back in his chair. But I'm a patient man. Rose picked up her spoon, more to have something to do with her hands than from actual hunger. The soup was good beef bone broth with vegetables, rich and comforting. She ate a few bites, while Jae-min watched with unsettling attention. Why me? Rose asked finally. 6 months. You watched me for 6 months. You could have anyone. Why me specifically? Jae-min was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, you smiled at a child in the hospital. A little boy with leukemia. He was crying because his fore hurt, and you sat with him for an hour, reading stories until he fell asleep. You were late to a meeting with your father because of it. Rose remembered that day. The boy's name was Minjun. I was watching you conduct business that afternoon, Jae-min continued. I'd planned to approach you about a property acquisition. But then I saw you with that child, and I realized you were different. Real. Not performing for anyone. Just kind because that's who you are. His voice carried something Rose hadn't expected, longing. I've spent my entire life surrounded by people who perform, he said. Who calculate every word, every gesture. You don't do that. Even now, scared and angry, you're honest. That's rare in my world. Worth protecting. Rose's throat tightened. So you decided to trap me in your world instead. Yes. No apology. No justification. Just acknowledgement. The honesty was almost worse than a lie would have been. I don't know if I can do this, Rose whispered. Jae-min stood, and for a moment she thought he might reach for her. Instead, he moved toward the door. You can. You're stronger than you think. Eat. Rest. Tomorrow will be easier. How do you know? He paused in the doorway, his profile sharp against the hallway light. Because tomorrow you'll wake up alive and whole. And the day after that. And the day after that. Eventually, you'll realize that survival is its own kind of victory. Then he was gone, leaving Rose alone with her dinner and thoughts too tangled to sort. She ate the soup. All of it. And hated herself a little for how good it tasted. If you're still watching, drop a comment telling me whether you think Rose should run or stay. And don't forget to like this video. We're just getting started. Rose woke to sunlight streaming through windows she'd forgotten to cover and the immediate disorientation of unfamiliar surroundings. For a blissful moment, she didn't remember. Then reality crashed back. The wedding, the contract, Jae-min's dark eyes promising protection that felt like possession. She was married to a criminal. Living in his house. Wearing his ring. A soft knock made her tense. Miss Rose. A woman's voice, accented with Busan dialect. May I enter? Rose pulled the blankets up to her chin. Yes. The woman who entered was perhaps 50, dressed in simple, elegant clothes, carrying a tray. I'm Mrs. Yang. I manage the household staff. Mr. Kang asked me to bring you breakfast and help you settle in. Mrs. Yang's expression was professionally neutral, but her eyes held something that might have been sympathy. She set the tray on the bedside table, more soup, rice, fresh fruit, and tea that smelled like jasmine. Mr. Kang is in meetings this morning, Mrs. Yang continued. He asked me to tell you that you're welcome to explore the grounds, use the library, or remain in your rooms. Whatever you prefer. Rose found her voice. Where is he? His office is in the West Wing, but he also maintains offices downtown. Today he's handling business from home. Mrs. Young moved to the windows, opening them slightly to let in fresh air. The estate has gardens, a pool, and a gym. There's also a music room if you'd like to play piano. Mr. Kang mentioned you enjoyed music. Of course he had. Thank you, Rose said. I think I'd like to be alone for a while. Mrs. Yang nodded and departed silently, leaving Rose with breakfast and the dawning realization that this was her life now. No going back. No escape clause. She ate mechanically, then showered in the absurdly luxurious bathroom, trying not to think about how Jae-min had known exactly which products she preferred. When she finally dressed, choosing the simplest clothes she could find, jeans and a soft sweater, and ventured out of her rooms, she found the estate quiet, but not empty. Security personnel moved through hallways with professional discretion. Staff went about their duties without meeting her eyes. Everyone knew who she was. What she was. The pretty bird in the gilded cage. Rose found the library on the first floor, a two-story room lined with books in multiple languages. Someone had clearly curated the collection with care, classics alongside modern literature, poetry, philosophy, even cookbooks. She ran her fingers along the spines, looking for something, anything, to distract her from the reality of her situation. You're up early. Rose spun. Jae-min stood in the doorway, dressed in business casual, slacks and a button-down that somehow made him look more dangerous than the wedding suit had. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it. I couldn't sleep, Rose admitted. Understandable. He entered the library, moving to a desk in the corner where papers were spread in organized chaos. Mrs. Yang said you turned down help settling in. I don't need help unpacking clothes I didn't choose. Jae-min glanced at her, expression unreadable. Fair point. Would you prefer to select your own wardrobe? Rose blinked. She'd expected defensiveness, not accommodation. Yes. I would. I'll have Mrs. Young arrange a shopping trip. She'll accompany you with security. Security. Rose's laugh was bitter. Because I'm a prisoner. Because you're valuable. Jae-min's tone remained level. I have enemies, Rose. People who would love nothing more than to hurt me by hurting what's mine. Until you understand how this world works, you don't go anywhere without protection. What's yours? Rose repeated. Like a possession. Like my wife. He straightened from the desk, giving her his full attention. There's a difference. Is there? You bought me from my father. You've controlled every aspect of my life since the moment we met. You won't let me leave without guards. How is that different from ownership? Jae-min crossed the space between them in 3 long strides. Rose's back hit the bookshelf before she'd consciously decided to retreat, and suddenly he was right there, close enough that she could see flecks of amber in his dark eyes, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. He didn't touch her, but his presence was overwhelming. If you were a possession, he said softly, dangerously, I would have taken you to my bed last night. I would have claimed what your father's debt purchased. I would have used you however I wanted because objects don't have the right to refuse. Rose's breath caught. But you're not an object, Jae-min continued. You're a person. My person, yes, but still a person with thoughts and feelings and autonomy. So I gave you your own rooms. Your own space. Your own choice about whether and when we share a bed. That's the difference. He was too close. Rose's heart raced, but not entirely from fear. There was something else threading through her terror, awareness of him as a man, not just a threat. The clean scent of his cologne. The way his eyes tracked every change in her expression. The carefully controlled power in the way he held himself still. You're still trapping me, Rose whispered. Yes. No apology. But I'm giving you the best cage I can build. Make of that what you will. He stepped back, and Rose could breathe again. I have work to finish, Jae-min said, returning to his desk as if that entire exchange hadn't just rewired something fundamental in Rose's understanding of her situation. You're welcome to stay and read. Or explore. Or go back to your rooms. Whatever you prefer. Rose should have left. Should have put distance between herself and this man who confused her on levels she didn't want to examine. Instead, she pulled a book from the shelf at random and settled into one of the leather armchairs near the window. If Jae-min was surprised, he didn't show it. He simply returned to his papers, and they spent the next hour in silence broken only by the rustle of pages and the scratch of his pen. It was, against all logic, almost peaceful. The routine Jae-min had promised emerged over the following days. Rose woke to find breakfast waiting. She spent mornings reading or exploring the gardens, always accompanied by security. She pretended not to notice. Afternoons, Mrs. Yang appeared with updates or questions, treating Rose with a respect that felt genuine despite the circumstances. And Jae-min. Jae-min was a constant, confusing presence. He didn't crowd her, didn't demand her time or attention, but he was always there, on the periphery of her awareness. Working in the library while she read. Eating dinner across from her in a dining room that felt too large for two people. Asking about her day in that quiet, intent way that suggested he actually cared about the answer. It was disorienting. Rose kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for him to reveal his true nature, to demand the rights their marriage contract gave him. But days passed, then a week, and Jae-min maintained his distance with a discipline that seemed almost inhuman. Until the night, everything shifted. Rose couldn't sleep. Again. She'd been having nightmares, fragments of her old life mixing with fears about her new one, all tangled together into surreal anxiety that left her gasping awake at 2 a.m. After the third time, she gave up on rest and wandered downstairs, thinking a glass of water might help. The kitchen was dark except for the glow of under-cabinet lighting. Rose was halfway to the sink when she noticed the figure at the breakfast bar. Jae-min sat alone, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring at nothing. He'd shed his usual armor, literally. His dress shirt was unbuttoned, revealing a white undershirt and more of those scars she'd glimpsed before. His hair was mussed, and there was something almost vulnerable about him in the dim light. "Can't sleep either?" Rose asked before she could think better of it. Jae-min's head turned, his expression cycling through surprise before settling into something guarded. "Occupational hazard. You get used to insomnia in my line of work." Rose moved to the other side of the breakfast bar, maintaining distance but not fleeing. "What do you do when you can't sleep?" "Work. Usually." He gestured to the tablet beside his glass. "But tonight I'm just drinking and thinking." "About what?" "Whether I've made a terrible mistake." The admission was so unexpected that Rose actually laughed. "You're worried you made a mistake?" "I'm the one who got sold into marriage with a stranger, who happens to be a criminal. Don't forget that part." Jae-min's mouth twisted. "I told myself I could do this. Could bring you into my world without destroying what makes you, you. But watching you these past weeks, seeing you trapped here," he took a drink. "Maybe your father was right to hate me for this." Rose didn't know what to say. This version of Jae-min, uncertain, almost broken, didn't match the controlled predator she'd built in her mind. "He didn't hate you," Rose said finally. "He was terrified of you." "There's a difference." "Is there?" "You're terrified of me too." "Yes. No point lying. But I'm starting to think there might be more to you than the monster everyone describes." Jae-min's laugh was hollow. "Don't mistake restraint for goodness, Rose. I've killed men. Ordered deaths. Built my family's empire on blood and fear. The fact that I haven't hurt you doesn't make me less dangerous." "Then why haven't you?" Rose moved closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. "You said you wanted me. You've had me trapped here for weeks. Why haven't you taken what you claim to want?" Jae-min set down his glass with careful precision. "Because I don't want a victim. I want—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "What? What do you want?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Rose felt the full force of his attention like standing in the sun. "I want you to look at me the way you looked at that child in the hospital. Like I'm human. Like I matter. Like I'm worth saving despite every reason not to." The words hit Rose like a physical blow. This man, this dangerous, deadly man, wanted to be seen. To be known. To matter to someone who didn't fear him. And Rose, against every instinct for self-preservation, found herself wanting to give him that. "Come here," Jae-min said softly. Rose's pulse spiked. "Why?" Because I'm asking. Not ordering. Asking. His eyes never left hers. And because I think you're curious about what happens if you do. He was right. God help her, he was right. Rose took one step forward. Then another. Until she stood close enough to touch, separated only by the breakfast bar between them. Now what? She whispered. Jae-min reached across the counter, his hand hovering near her face. Now you decide if you'll let me touch you. If you'll trust me enough for that. Rose's breath came short and fast. Every rational thought screamed at her to retreat. This was Kang Jae-min, Seoul's most dangerous criminal. A man who'd admitted to killing without remorse. But his hand trembled slightly as he waited for her answer. And his eyes held something raw and desperate that called to parts of Rose she'd been suppressing since the wedding. She leaned into his touch. Jae-min's palm cupped her cheek with devastating gentleness, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. His skin was warm, calloused, and the contact sent electricity racing through her entire body. Rose, he breathed, and her name had never sounded like that before, reverent, wondering, like a prayer from someone who'd forgotten how to believe. This was dangerous. This moment, this man, this feeling building in her chest that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with something far more terrifying. Want. Jae-min's hand dropped away from Rose's face as if she'd burned him. He stood abruptly, putting the breakfast bar between them like a barrier against his own impulses. You should go back to bed, he said, his voice rough. Rose's heart was still racing, her skin tingling where he'd touched her. What if I don't want to? Rose. Her name was a warning. Don't push this. Why not? You're the one who touched me. You're the one who asked me to trust you. And you did. Which means I need to be the one with control right now. Jae-min's hands gripped the counter edge, knuckles white. Because if you stay here, if you keep looking at me like that, I'm going to do something we'll both regret. Like what? Like kissing you until you forget every reason this is a terrible idea. His eyes met hers, dark and hungry. Like carrying you upstairs and showing you exactly what I've been restraining myself from doing since the moment I saw you in that wedding dress. Like making you mine in every way that matters. Rose should have been frightened. Should have run. Instead, heat pooled low in her stomach, and something reckless stirred in her chest. Maybe I want that, she heard herself say. You don't. Jae-min's voice was strained. You're confused and scared, and your whole world has been turned upside down. I won't take advantage of that. So you get to decide what I want now? Yes. Because I'm thinking clearly and you're not. He grabbed his glass and tablet. Go to bed, Rose. Please. The please broke through her reckless mood. Rose watched him leave the kitchen, his movements controlled but tense, and felt something shift inside her. He was right. She wasn't thinking clearly. But not for the reasons he assumed. She was starting to see Kang Jae-min as a man instead of a monster. And that was far more dangerous than any physical threat he posed. Rose returned to her rooms, but didn't sleep. She lay in bed replaying that moment, the feel of his hand on her face, the raw need in his voice when he'd said her name. This was a problem. A massive, complicated problem she had no idea how to solve. Because some part of her, a part that was growing stronger every day, wanted to go to him. Wanted to close the distance he maintained so carefully. Wanted to see what happened when Kang Jae-min's legendary control finally broke. The next morning, Mrs. Yang appeared with breakfast and an announcement that made Rose's stomach drop. Mr. Kang will be away on business for 3 days. He's left instructions for your security and asked me to ensure you have everything you need. 3 days. Jae-min was running from what had happened between them. Rose should have been relieved. Instead, she felt something uncomfortably close to disappointment. The days dragged. Rose tried to maintain her routine, but the estate felt emptier without Jae-min's presence. She caught herself listening for his footsteps in the library, waiting for him to appear at dinner, wondering where he was and what dangerous business kept him away. On the third night, she woke to the sound of voices downstairs. Angry voices. Rose crept to her door and opened it carefully, hearing fragments of conversation drifting up from the ground floor. Can't keep avoiding this, an unfamiliar male voice. I'm handling it. Jae-min. He sounded exhausted. Handling it? You've been married for 3 weeks and you're sleeping in separate wings. People are talking. Let them talk. Hyung, listen to me. If you don't establish your claim properly, the family will see it as weakness. They're already questioning why you bothered with a marriage contract if you're not going to. Enough. Jaemin's voice cut through like a blade. My marriage is not open for discussion. Rose eased her door shut, her mind racing. Jaemin was under pressure from his organization. They expected him to consummate the marriage, to claim her fully. And he was refusing, protecting her at a cost to his own position. The realization hit her hard. Jaemin wasn't just restraining himself for her sake. He was actively choosing her comfort over his own power. The next morning, Rose found him in the library. He looked terrible. Shadows under his eyes, 3 days of stubble darkening his jaw, his dress shirt wrinkled as if he'd slept in it. He was working at his desk, but his usual focus seemed fractured. You're back, Rose said from the doorway. Jaemin's head snapped up. I didn't mean to wake you last night. I tried to keep the meeting quiet. I heard some of it. Rose entered the library, closing the door behind her. Your family is questioning our marriage. His expression shuddered. That's not your concern. It is if it affects you. Rose moved closer, studying his face. You're protecting me at a cost to yourself. Why? Because that's what husbands do. Not the kind of husbands who buy their wives. Not the kind of men who run criminal empires. Rose sat in the chair across from his desk. What's really going on? Jaemin leaned back, a muscle ticking in his jaw. For a long moment, Rose thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed. My position in the family isn't as secure as people think, he admitted. My father's death left a power vacuum. I'm the heir, but there are rivals who think I'm too soft. Too controlled. They're waiting for me to make a mistake. And taking a wife without asserting your claim looks like weakness. Yes. His eyes found hers. They think you've made me weak. That I've lost my edge. Have you? Jaemin's laugh was bitter. Probably. I used to make decisions based purely on strategy. What benefited the organization? What consolidated power? But now I lie awake at night worrying about whether you're happy. Whether you feel safe. Whether you'll ever look at me without fear. Rose's throat tightened. I don't fear you. Not anymore. You should. I'm still everything you thought I was on our wedding day. Dangerous. Ruthless. Willing to do terrible things to protect what's mine. But you're also the man who brings me soup when I don't eat. Who gave me my own space when you could have taken everything. Who touches me like I'm something precious. Rose stood, moving around the desk. I'm starting to think the monster everyone describes isn't the whole story. Jaemin watched her approach, his body tensing. Rose, what are you doing? Something reckless. She stopped beside his chair. You said you wanted me to see you as human. As worth saving. I do. So now I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. What? Do you actually want me? Or do you just want to possess me? Jaemin stood slowly, and suddenly they were inches apart, the air between them crackling with tension. I want you so badly it's destroying my focus. I want to touch you, taste you, learn every sound you make when you're pleased. I want you in my bed, in my life, in every moment of every day. His hand came up, cupping her face like he had that night in the kitchen. But I also want you happy, safe, willing. And those things don't always align. What if they could? Rose's voice came out breathless. What if I told you I'm tired of fighting this? That I'm curious about what happens if I stop resisting? Then I'd tell you to think very carefully before making that choice. Because once we cross that line, there's no going back. You'll be mine in every way, and I won't be able to pretend I'm not obsessed with you. Obsessed? Rose felt her pulse spike. Completely. Dangerously. I've been obsessed since that day at the hospital when I first saw you. It's only gotten worse. His thumb traced her lower lip. So be very sure, Rose. Because my control has limits, and you're pushing every single one of them. Rose's decision crystallized in that moment. She was trapped in this marriage regardless. She could spend the rest of her life fighting against it, making herself miserable while Jaemin maintained his disciplined distance. Or she could choose to step forward into the unknown, to explore this dangerous chemistry that had been building between them since the wedding. She raised up on her toes and kissed him. For one suspended second, Jae-min froze. Then his control shattered. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her against him as he deepened the kiss with a hunger that stole her breath. His mouth was hot and demanding, claiming her with an intensity that should have frightened her but instead sent heat racing through her entire body. Rose gripped his shoulders, feeling the hard muscle beneath his shirt, the barely leashed power in the way he held her. This was Kang Jae-min unleashed, and it was overwhelming and intoxicating and completely overwhelming. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. Jaemin's eyes were nearly black with desire, his careful mask completely gone. "Rose," he said roughly, "we need to stop." "Why?" "Because if we don't, I'm going to take you right here on this desk, and you deserve better than that for your first time with me." The words sent a shiver through her. What if I don't want to stop? Jaemin's grip on her tightened. Then you're going to get exactly what you're asking for. He lifted her easily, setting her on the edge of his desk and stepping between her legs. The position put them at eye level, intimate and intense. Jaemin's hands framed her face, his thumbs stroking her cheeks as he studied her. "Last chance," he murmured. "Tell me no and I'll walk away. Tell me yes and you're mine." Rose's heart hammered. This was insane. Reckless. Everything she'd spent 3 weeks resisting. "Yes," she whispered. Jae-min kissed her again, slower this time, but no less consuming. His hands moved from her face to her waist, sliding under her sweater to touch bare skin. Rose gasped at the contact, at the heat of his palms against her ribs, and Jae-min swallowed the sound hungrily. "Tell me if I do something you don't like," he said against her mouth. "Tell me if I'm going too fast. Tell me if you want to stop." "I won't want to stop. Tell me anyway. I need to hear you, Rose. Need to know you're with me." His consideration, even in the middle of this, made something crack open in her chest. "I'm with you." Jaemin's smile was devastating. "Good. Because I've been imagining this for 6 months and I plan to take my time. Make sure you're subscribed because what happens next between Rose and Jae-min gets even more intense. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single update." The next hour was a revelation. Jae-min touched her like she was something precious and breakable, but also like he couldn't get enough. His kisses were demanding, but his hands were gentle, learning her responses, cataloging what made her gasp and shiver. When he finally carried her upstairs to his rooms, Rose felt completely overwhelmed and completely safe all at once. His bedroom was simpler than she'd expected, minimal furniture, dark colors, a massive bed that dominated the space. Jae-min set her down carefully, his eyes never leaving hers as he slowly, deliberately unbuttoned his shirt. Rose watched, mesmerized, as more of him was revealed. The scars she'd glimpsed before covered his torso, a roadmap of violence survived. Bullet wounds. Knife marks. Stories written in damaged flesh. "These scare you?" Jae-min asked quietly. Rose reached out, tracing a particularly nasty scar across his ribs. "They make me angry. That people hurt you like this." His breath caught. "Rose, I know what you are. What you've done. But that doesn't mean I want you hurt." She looked up at him. "Is that strange?" "It's perfect." Jae-min captured her hand, pressing it flat against his chest where she could feel his heart racing. "You're perfect." What followed was intense and overwhelming and nothing like Rose had imagined. Jae-min was demanding but attentive, pushing her boundaries while constantly checking her responses. He learned her body with the same focused intensity he brought to everything else, and when he finally made her completely his, Rose understood what he'd meant about crossing lines. There was no going back from this. No pretending she didn't want him, didn't crave his touch, didn't feel something dangerous and consuming building in her chest every time he looked at her. Afterward, they lay tangled together in his bed, Jaemin's fingers tracing lazy patterns on her skin. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. Rose turned in his arms to face him. "What?" "There's going to be fallout from this. My family will know we've consummated the marriage. They'll expect you to take a more public role. Be seen at events. Meet people who are," he paused, "dangerous. I'm married to you. I think I've already met the most dangerous person in Seoul. His smile was brief. You'd be surprised. But I'll protect you. Always. That's not negotiable. Even if it costs you? Especially then. Jaemin's expression turned serious. You need to understand something, Rose. I told you I was obsessed, and I meant it. You're not just my wife. You're the only thing in my life that matters more than power. More than the organization. More than survival. The words should have felt suffocating. Instead, they felt like a promise. That's terrifying, Rose admitted. I know. But it's the truth. His hand cupped her face. I'll give you everything you want. Protection. Freedom within reason. Respect. But I won't let you go. Ever. Can you live with that? Rose thought about her old life, the gilded cage her father had built, the expectations and restrictions, the loneliness of being valued only for her utility. Then she thought about these past weeks with Jae-min. The way he'd given her space while making her feel seen. The restraint that had cost him politically. The vulnerability he showed only to her. Yes, she said. I can live with that. Jae-min kissed her, and Rose felt the last of her resistance crumble. This was her life now. Not the one she'd chosen, but maybe the one she needed. The next morning, Rose woke in Jae-min's bed to find him already awake, watching her with an expression that made her heart skip. What? She asked sleepily. Just memorizing this. You here, looking at me like I'm not a monster. You're not a monster. You're just a man who does monstrous things sometimes. Is there a difference? Rose considered. I think so. Monsters can't choose to be better. You can. Something vulnerable flickered in his eyes. I'm not sure I can be what you deserve. Then be what I need instead. Be honest. Be protective. Be you. Jae-min pulled her closer, burying his face in her hair. I can do that. They stayed like that for a while, wrapped around each other in the morning light. Then reality intruded in the form of Jae-min's phone buzzing insistently. He checked it and sighed. I have a meeting in 2 hours. Family business. The kind that's dangerous? All of it's dangerous. But this is just politics. He kissed her forehead. Stay here. Rest. I'll be back by evening. Rose watched him dress, admiring the controlled efficiency of his movements. This was Kang Jae-min preparing for battle, even if the battlefield was a conference room. Be careful, she said. He paused at the door, surprise flickering across his face. You're worried about me. Of course I am. You're my husband. The smile he gave her was brilliant and brief, transforming his severe features into something approaching joy. Then he was gone, and Rose was left alone with her thoughts. She'd crossed the line. Given herself to Seoul's most dangerous man. Admitted she cared about his safety. Any objective observer would say she'd lost her mind. But lying in his bed, wearing his shirt, feeling the pleasant ache of new intimacy, Rose couldn't bring herself to regret it. The days that followed established a new rhythm. Jae-min was still careful with her, still protective, but the distance was gone. He touched her freely now, a hand at the small of her back, fingers threading through hers at dinner, casual intimacy that made Rose feel claimed in ways that should have bothered her but didn't. He also began including her in parts of his world she'd been sheltered from. Not the violence, he was adamant about keeping her separated from that. But the business aspects. The strategic decisions. The complicated politics of running a criminal empire. You're smarter than half my advisors, he told her one evening as they reviewed a property acquisition proposal. And you see angles they miss. Use that. Rose found she enjoyed the challenge. Enjoyed feeling useful, valued for her mind instead of just her presence. Jae-min listened to her opinions, incorporated her suggestions, treated her like a partner instead of a possession. It was intoxicating. 2 weeks after that night in the library, everything changed. Rose was in the garden when she heard shouting from inside the house. She ran toward the sound, her security team trying to intercept her, but she pushed past them into the entry hall. Jae-min stood facing 3 men in expensive suits. The air crackled with tension, and even from across the room, Rose could see the anger in Jae-min's posture. This is not your decision, one of the men was saying. The family has discussed it. We need to expand into the Southern Territories and Park's connections. Park is a liability, Jae-min cut him off. I've explained this. The expansion isn't worth the exposure. The family disagrees. Then the family is wrong. Jaemin's voice went dangerously soft. I'm the head of this organization. My decision is final. The man stepped closer, and Rose saw his hand move toward his jacket. Instinct took over. She ran forward, putting herself between Jae-min and the threat. Don't, she said clearly. Everyone froze. The man stared at her in shock. Jaemin's hand clamped on her arm, pulling her behind him with a force that bordered on violent. Get her out of here, he ordered his security team. No, Rose planted her feet, resisting the guard trying to lead her away. If you're going to threaten my husband, you're going to have to go through me first. The silence was absolute. Then the man facing Jae-min began to laugh. So the rumors are true. You've actually fallen for her. He shook his head. This is either brilliant or the stupidest thing you've ever done, Jae-min. Out, Jae-min said. All of you. This meeting is over. The men left, still murmuring among themselves. When they were gone, Jae-min rounded on Rose, his expression furious. What were you thinking? You could have been killed. He was reaching for a weapon. I know what he was doing. I've been handling situations like that since before you learned to walk. Jae-min gripped her shoulders. You don't throw yourself in front of armed men, Rose. Not ever. Not for me. Why not? You've been protecting me since the wedding. Let me return the favor. It's not the same. Why? Because I'm your wife? Your possession. Rose pulled away from him. You said I wasn't an object. That I had autonomy. So let me choose to protect you the same way you protect me. Jae-min stared at her, emotions warring across his face. You're going to drive me insane. Good. Then we'll be even. He pulled her into his arms so abruptly she gasped. Don't do that again. Please. I can't think clearly when you're in danger. Rose softened against him. Then don't put yourself in danger and I won't have to. That's not how this works. Then we're both going to have to learn to compromise. Jaemin's laugh was shaky. You've completely destroyed my control, you know that? I used to be able to walk into a room full of armed enemies without flinching. Now I'm terrified because my wife has decided she's my bodyguard. Not your bodyguard. Your partner. Rose pulled back to look at him. If we're going to do this, really do this, then I need to be more than just the pretty wife you keep locked away. I need to be someone who stands beside you. Jae-min studied her face for a long moment. Then he kissed her, hard and possessive and full of everything he didn't say out loud. Partners, he agreed finally. But you still follow security protocols. Deal? Deal. That night, lying in bed with Jae-min's arm around her, Rose realized she'd stopped thinking about escape. Stopped mourning her old life. Somewhere along the way, this had become her reality, not the prison she'd feared, but something she'd chosen. What are you thinking? Jae-min asked quietly. That my father would be horrified by how much I don't hate this. This? You. Us. This life. Rose turned to face him. I should hate it. Hate you. But I don't. Jaemin's expression was carefully neutral. What do you feel instead? Rose considered her answer carefully. The word hanging between them, the one neither had spoken, felt too big, too dangerous. But also inevitable. I think I'm falling in love with you, she admitted. Which is insane, because you bought me like property, and I've only known you for 6 weeks. But there it is. Jae-min was silent for so long that Rose's heart sank. Then he pulled her closer, his voice rough against her hair. I fell in love with you 6 months ago watching you comfort a child you didn't know. Everything since then has just been me trying to deserve the chance to tell you that. Rose's breath caught. Jae-min. I know it's not rational. I know I'm not what you would have chosen. But I love you, Rose. Completely. Obsessively. In ways that probably aren't healthy, but I can't help. He tilted her face up to meet his eyes. You're everything good I didn't think I could have. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you. Tears stung Rose's eyes. You already are. The kiss that followed was different from all the others, slower, deeper, full of promises neither of them could articulate, but both understood. When they finally broke apart, Rose felt something settle in her chest. Peace. Certainty. Home. This was her life now. Married to Seoul's most dangerous man. living in a world of violence and power plays and constant danger, but also loved with an intensity that took her breath away. Protected fiercely, valued completely, seen for who she was instead of what she represented. No regrets? Jae-min asked softly. Rose thought about the wedding, the contract, the fear. Then she thought about this. Jae-min's arms around her, his heart beating against hers, his love offered without reservation. No regrets, she said. 3 months later, Rose stood beside Jae-min at a family function, wearing a dress he'd chosen and a confidence she'd earned. The room was full of dangerous people, criminals and corrupt officials, and people who would kill without hesitation if the price was right. But she was Kang Jae-min's wife, which meant she was untouchable, protected, powerful in her own right. You're smiling, Jae-min murmured, his hand at the small of her back. Just thinking about how far we've come. Regrets yet? Rose looked up at him, this man who'd bought her freedom and given her a different kind of prison, who'd respected her boundaries while slowly dismantling every wall she'd built, who'd fallen in love with her kindness and taught her that she could be both gentle and strong. Not a single one, she said. Jae-min's smile was private, meant only for her. Good. Because you're stuck with me now. Forever. Longer than that if I can manage it. Rose laughed, and somewhere in the crowded room, someone commented on how the infamous Kang Jae-min had been tamed by love. But watching him navigate the evening with lethal grace, while keeping her close, Rose knew the truth. He hadn't been tamed. He'd simply found something worth being gentle for. And she'd found something she'd never expected in an arranged marriage to a criminal, real love. Dangerous, consuming, absolutely fierce love that had turned a prison into a home. The story could have ended there. But this was Seoul's underworld, and nothing stayed peaceful for long. As the evening wound down and Rose and Jae-min prepared to leave, she caught a glimpse of a man watching them from across the room. His expression wasn't angry or threatening. It was calculating, assessing, and when his eyes met Rose's, he smiled. Not a friendly smile. A promise. Jae-min, Rose said quietly. He followed her gaze, and his entire body went rigid. We're leaving. Now. As they were driven home through Seoul's glittering streets, Rose felt the first prickle of real fear since accepting her new life. Who was that? She asked. Someone I thought I'd dealt with. Jae-min's jaw was tight. Someone who just became a problem. What kind of problem? He looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something she hadn't seen before. Genuine worry. The kind that threatens everything I love, he said. Which means the kind I'll destroy without mercy. Rose reached for his hand, threading their fingers together. Then we'll handle it. Together. Jae-min's grip tightened. Together. The car pulled through the gates of their estate, and Rose felt the weight of what was coming. Their peace had been temporary. Now they'd face whatever threat was emerging as what they'd become. Partners. Equals. Two people bound by a contract that had turned into something neither of them had expected. Love. And in Seoul's dangerous underworld, love was the most powerful weapon of all. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Drop a comment telling me what you think happens next to Rose and Jae-min. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more intense romance stories. Part 2 is coming soon, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when Rose's past collides with Jae-min's enemies. See you in next one. The